Whoa, the date. Getting close to Christmas now, 22nd of December. I hope you're all ready to go. I've seen probably the highest number of cars on the road that I've ever seen at any time of the year today. It's been mayhem, especially at the various car parks and centres of, well, shopping centres, I suppose. I've never seen anything like it. It's been 20 minutes just trying to get out of a car park today. So I hope you've all got your shopping in because I wouldn't try doing it today. Anyway, talking of shopping, I thought I'd do a little Inde-Car show about some numbers, some really big numbers about the kind of money that the UK government spends supposedly on our behalf for various things. Now, you've probably heard of a thing called carbon capture, which is a procedure whereby at an industrial scale, exhaust emissions from things like power stations, which are typically gas-fired or in some other way powered by some kind of combustion. This is a means of sucking the carbon dioxide out of those exhaust fumes and turning it into something else. Now, usually what they do with carbon dioxide is they store it and then pump it deep underground. Now, when I say pump it deep underground, what I mean is they pipe it offshore and they pump it down spent gas and oil wells, ones that no longer have any gas or oil in them, and pump all of that carbon dioxide down into the rocks. Now, in principle, it sounds like a terrific idea because it gets rid of a lot of the CO2, which is causing the atmosphere to heat up, but it costs a lot of money. Now, in Scotland, there have been several attempts at setting up carbon capture. And a few years ago, in fact, all of the funding for the carbon capture in Scotland was stopped. Labour has now reinstated some of it, but I'm going to give you some figures just to give you an idea of how much is spent or how much the Labour Party plans to give Scottish carbon capture compared to that of English carbon capture, because it's quite shocking. Now, Acorn, which is the company in Scotland which was going to set up the carbon capture plant, I believe, in Aberdeenshire, has been given, as far as I understand it, about 120 million. It might be a little bit more than that because I think there was some other money given as well. So let's say rounding it up to about 150 million pounds to set up a carbon capture plant in Scotland. Now that sounds great. How big a carbon capture plant can you build for 150 million pounds? Not much, actually. But let's compare it to how much the Labour Party is spending on carbon capture in England at Redcar. According to the figures I've seen, the British Labour Party is planning to spend £4 billion on carbon capture at Redcar. That's £4,000 million. Now, just to give you some idea of the context, that is approximately 33 times as much as they are planning to give, if you like, to Scotland for its carbon capture. Now, if you think of this for a moment, the Scottish population makes up approximately 8% of the United Kingdom's entire population. So we should be getting 8% of the funding. But we're not. We're not even getting anything like that. We're getting a 33rd of the funding. That's a very, very tiny amount of money compared to the massive amount that the Labour Party is investing in Redcar. If you add on to that the costs of refurbishing Westminster, and not just refurbishing Westminster, the bit of it where we elect MPs. No. This is refurbishing the bit of Westminster where the Lords sit, the unelected, appointed seat warmers who do very little other than turn up and get paid over £300 a time for doing it. They're getting a nice new makeover of their building, costing £200 million. Then there was another report came out in the Defence Journal this week, which, frankly, was astonishing. The British Labour Party decided that they were going to spend £70 million refurbishing a British warship. And that might sound like good value for money because it saves building another warship. But actually, that wasn't the reason why they were refurbishing it. They were refurbishing this ship with a view to selling it to another country. And I believe, I stand to be corrected here, I think they sold it to the Brazilian Navy. So they spent 70 million on it, doing it up. What do you think they sold it for? Any guesses? 20 million. They lost 50 million pounds of our money doing up a warship which actually belonged to the UK Navy and selling it to another navy at a massive loss. And this is the British Labour Party, which is supposedly being so prudent with our money, while many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people across the UK are freezing to death because they don't have enough money. Their bills are too high. They can't afford to heat. They can't afford to eat. And the British Labour Party is doing nothing about it. It's frittering money away on all sorts of things which it doesn't need. Like this warship, which apparently it didn't need, but sold it at a loss after refurbishing it. Why not sell it for 20 million and let the Brazilian Navy refurbish it? Wouldn't that have made a bit more sense? Anyway, so I'm just throwing these figures out to you to show you the imbalance between what's spent by the British government in Britain, mostly England, if you think of it, Britain is really England under a new name, and the waste, the colossal amount of waste that the Labour Party is generating. But not only that, the huge imbalance in the amount of spending on carbon capture in England compared to that in Scotland. Now, you know and I know that there are not 33 times more people in England than there are in Scotland. So why are we being shortchanged when it's our oil industry which is largely basically producing all of this pollution which carbon capture is intended to prevent? Goodness knows, but it certainly isn't for the good of people in Aberdeen, and it's mostly for the good of people in Inde-Car, who are getting the £4 billion instead of the paltry 150 million that Aberdeen's been given. So there's a huge imbalance. Now, I mentioned the fact that Westminster is ruling over us, and the fact that Britain is actually England. Now, I noticed somebody, I'm not sure who it was, produced a very interesting post today on X, where he had supplied a whole lot of information to Grok, the artificial intelligence on X, and asked it a simple question. Is the union between Scotland and England a voluntary union, or is it annexation? And Grok gave a very detailed answer and said that, although on paper it was written up as being a voluntary union, in practice it is actually annexation. And that was coming from a source which has no horse in the race. Grok is a machine. It does not have a political preference, but it looked at the evidence and it said quite clearly that Scotland is annexed. And I also noticed that Sarah Salyers from Salvo has now said publicly for the first time, as far as I know, that she's no longer going to refer to the union. She's going to refer to it as the annexation. And I think we all have to think of it that way, because we can see clearly from the way the British government behaves that it is defunding Scotland and massively overfunding itself, its own country, England, to our detriment. To Aberdeen's detriment. Aberdeen, which has basically supplied the UK with all of its oil and gas revenues for 50 years and is being rewarded with this paltry slap in the face to install what will end up being the smallest carbon capture system in the UK. So we can see that as an annexed territory of England as Britain, Scotland is very, very far down the pecking order when it comes to being given anything. For all the talk of pooling and sharing resources, what actually happens is our resources are pooled out of Scotland and shared in England. That is the reality. We just do not see it. We don't even see our 8% of it. Nothing like it. A 33rd of what England is spending on carbon capture is being given to Scotland for the same purpose. So those of you who are fans of the union, or as we now call it, the annexation, think on. Scotland is being basically shortchanged all the time. We're being kept poor, deliberately kept poor, so that we can't compete with England. One other little snippet of news appeared today, something which I was unaware of, that there was chaos in the Senate in the Welsh Parliament, where Welsh Labour MPs in the Senate, I think they're MPs or whatever they're called in the Senate, but members of that assembly, had rebelled against the Labour government because the Labour government of England had bypassed the Senate to fund Wales completely separately from its own governing authority. They'd bypassed it completely and were funding it directly. And this is very similar to the effect of the so-called Internal Markets Act in Scotland, where the British government can choose to fund things in Scotland and bypass the Scottish Parliament, bypass the elected Scottish Parliament, which is there to disburse money which is given for various purposes. So the Welsh are now in uproar because they are being defunded and their own elected officials are being circumvented by the Labour government. And a Labour government, which, remember, in Wales, Labour is still massively popular and has a lot of elected officials. And even those officials, Labour officials, are rebelling against their own government. So the situation is not getting better for any of the Celtic nations. I can't speak for Northern Ireland, or the northern bit of Ireland, I should say, at the moment, because I don't know what's going on there. But from what I can see, from the way we're being treated in Scotland and Wales, we're treated as second-class citizens. We don't matter. And we don't matter so much that we don't warrant the same kind of spending that people in England enjoy. So when you're having your Christmas dinner, just remember, you are living in an annexed country. Your money is not your own. Your investment is not your own. Your resources are not your own. Nothing that you think of yours as being Scottish is. It's British. It's being purloined. It's being siphoned off. The money is being disbursed elsewhere, and you're not seeing a return for it. And if you're still for the Union after hearing all of that, go and ask Grok the same question and see what this machine, this computer intelligence tells you about the truth of the so-called Union, which is really annexation. Anyway, I may do another show just before Christmas. I'm thinking of doing a Christmas Eve special, but I haven't decided yet on a theme for that. But I thought the numbers involved today were pretty shocking. 33 times more money spent on carbon capture in England. The waste of £50 million by doing up a ship and then selling it at a loss. £200 million spent doing up the House of Lords. My goodness me, they know how to waste money. Anyway, I do hope you all have a happy Christmas. So if I don't see you before, please enjoy yourselves. But just remember that you're not living in a country at the moment. You're living in a territory that's been annexed. And if you don't like that, then you need to get out on the streets and protest and join the growing campaign for liberation. Anyway, have a Merry Christmas and a good New Year. If I don't see you before, I'm hoping to put out a little show probably on Christmas Eve. So if so, I'll see you then. But in the meantime, keep the faith. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.